Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm Claire Pankhurst, Head of Marketing and Partnerships at PhiX Technologies. And over the next 60 minutes, we're going to walk you through quote to revenue, the reality check. So where control breaks and more importantly, what to fix first. So I can see people joining, which is fantastic. We're going to be explaining exactly what we mean by quote to revenue as we go. But here's a concept for you to hold on to. Quote to revenue is about how revenue flows across the entire life cycle, from customer and sales transactions through operational reality and financial processes. When that flow is clean and controlled, you have revenue confidence. And where control breaks, revenue leaks, that's what we're here to discuss, demo and help you to diagnose today. So I just want to ground this in some context for everybody joining. 42% of companies are experiencing revenue leakage right now. And that's nearly half of all businesses, according to MGI research report that was published in December 2025. And consultancies like Boston Consulting Group estimate revenue leakage typically erodes 1 to 5% of EBITDA, depending on the complexity and scale. So let's think about that. That's a £100 million revenue company. That's between 1 and 5 million that's being left on the table. And here's what makes that particularly challenging. Invisibility. Companies can operate like this for years without detecting it. You'll see the symptoms, teams manually processing credit notes, reconciliation taking days instead of hours, and finance chasing down corrections. But the actual revenue loss often goes unnoticed. And now you're thinking, if it's invisible and we're hitting our numbers, why lift the rock and why not just leave it alone? And here's why, because revenue leakage doesn't stay invisible forever. It surfaces at the worst possible time. It shows up during M&A, due diligence, shows up during audits when external auditors are questioning compliance, and it shows up when major customer churns. The companies that address this proactively to recover the revenue, they can improve cash conversion and build a real competitive advantage. The companies that wait, they're forced to remediate under pressure during those audits, those M&As, and when a CFO transition reveals that problem. So leaky architecture also limits scalability, preventing growth without increasing headcount. And 45% of business leaders, according to the research, say that this is systemic. It's happening everywhere. It's not just one department, it's sales, billing, finance, collections, and your customers and employees feel the impact of those disconnected systems too. So that's why we brought together 3 people who are helping customers like you every day. They're building revenue integrity and confidence in their numbers. And so I'd just like to hand over to the panel to introduce yourself. Frank, would you want to kick off?
Sure. Thanks very much, Claire. Really pleased to be on this webinar with you guys today. So my name's Frank. I lead the solution engineering group at Salesforce for Revenue Cloud and Commerce Cloud. And I'm going to be giving you a bit of a point of view on the status quo of product to revenue. And I'll be wrapping up with some really exciting next steps as well. Andrew, over to you if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Frank. I'm Andrew Trumpeter. I'm the Principal Solutions Engineer for RightRev. As we'll take a look later in the demonstration, RightRev really adds in a layer to the Salesforce platform around revenue recognition and helps streamline that entire quote to revenue process, allowing you to have confidence in the revenue numbers that you're actually reporting. I actually come from an accounting background. I've spent about 10 years as a revenue accountant in my past life, so it's a topic that's very near and dear to me, and excited to show you what we have today. Justin, over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Hi guys, my name's Justin Wheatley, Director of Lead to Ledger at PhiX Technologies. In a past life, I've actually lived all of the issues that we're going to be talking about today when I was running a finance/billing team for a product company. So all of what we're discussing today is very close to my heart. And I'll be joining up with Andrew later to give you a demo on exactly how Agentforce Revenue Management can help address the issues that we're discussing in this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And so here's what we're going to spend the next time, sort of 50 minutes going through together. So we've got Frank, who's going to walk us through how revenue flows across the organization, setting the foundation so we can understand where that control breaks. Then Justin's going to do a live walkthrough of quote to cash using Salesforce Agentforce Revenue Management. And Andrew will also chime the automated revenue recognition and show you what that looks like in action. And then we're going to have a panel discussion. So have your questions ready. You can feel free to drop them in the chat as we go through what the impact is for you as a business or any questions you've got for the panel. Frank, I'll kick it over to you to start us off.
Thanks very much for that, Claire. So yeah, this is our forward-looking statement. If you've been in a presentation with Salesforce people on the call before, you'll be familiar with this slide. It's just a reminder essentially to make any purchasing decisions based on capabilities that are currently generally available. If there are any roadmap items, we'll be sure to call them out. Why don't we start off with a little bit of a history lesson on quote to cash on Salesforce. So if we start at the bottom left of this timeline, which it is in chronological order. So we really began our journey on the Salesforce platform around quote to cash with just simple quoting in Sales Cloud, right? So think individual line items, no bundling, no particular complexities around discounting. And that was really the sort of the first step in that journey. But obviously, as we go to market with more complex requirements in terms of pricing and packaging, the need for a CPQ was really clear. And we acquired a company called SteelBrick, and that gave us our first on-platform CPQ solution. So that would allow you to quote and price and bundle and generate orders that you could then send downstream to other systems to fulfill and bill. And naturally, as a next step, we were really keen to close the loop on what we would call quote to cash. So we acquired Invoicits, and that became Salesforce Billing. And so CPQ plus Salesforce Billing gave us that end-to-end first iteration, I guess, of our revenue management capability. Now, there was another gap in the market that we identified, and that was really around meeting industry-specific use cases. So think quoting for insurance policies or ad campaigns that you want to bill based on what's actually been delivered on an ad server. That is where our acquisition of Velocity came into the picture, right? And that formed the foundation of our industry solutions within Salesforce. So all that to say, up until a couple of years ago, we had a huge amount of capability on the platform that could meet all sorts of use cases, but in truth, they were slightly disjointed. So we thought what we need to do here is we need to consolidate this, and we need to come up with the most complete revenue management solution we can on the platform. We've done just that with Agentforce Revenue Management, right? So we can now take something right through from creating it in your product catalog through to pricing it, selling it on any channel, managing the complex order provisioning, managing all of the contracting considerations, right through to seeing that cash in your bank account on our latest iteration of tooling. Now, obviously, this coincided nicely with all of the great things that we've been doing in the AI space. Agentforce has formed a huge part of our solution. So what you're going to see mentioned, and you're going to see throughout this presentation, is we've peppered some amazing AI tooling at every step of this journey just to make your life a lot easier, right? And what we'll talk about in a second is how these processes affect everyone. So having something that is easy to use, intuitive, and highly automated is only going to help any organization achieve their goals. Revenue is something that is constantly evolving. If I think back to my career prior to Salesforce, I was working for a software company where we were still doing perpetual licenses, right? And that wasn't that long ago. Salesforce had obviously already been on the SaaS train for some time, was very much a pioneer of that. And we're moving now into a new era where people just want to pay for what they've consumed. So we've seen an evolution in revenue models, or typical revenue models that people go to market with over time. And I also think that there's a misconception about revenue as well. People think of it as a very sales specific thing or a finance specific metric that we look at, but it really is something that touches all elements of an organization. And the tooling around that is incredibly important as well, and having a steel thread throughout all of that. Now, more often than not, when I speak to customers who have yet to embark on their quote to cash transformation, their as is architecture can look something like this. So you'd have your CRM system on the left-hand side here of the diagram. So your customer system of record, so typically where your sales engagement is driven, and that may or may not be Salesforce. And on the right-hand side, you've got your ERP, right? That's more to do with the operational nuts and bolts, the running of your organization. But pertinent to this conversation, that's the source of truth for your general ledger. That is where your accounting is done. And in between, you've got to handle all of the transactional relationships that you've got with your customers. And that starts off with the fundamentals of capturing the stuff you want to sell. So you can see here we've got catalog listed just floating around in this ether of unorganized mess. And that might, for some people, that is just a spreadsheet, right? Or it could be a third-party standalone PIM solution. We've then also got contracts, so a really important piece of data. It shouldn't be a Word document floating around somewhere that tracks everything your customer has bought, but the truth is, sometimes it is. When it comes to CPQ and billing and pricing and all of those things, we see a lot of point solutions, so things that have been specifically acquired to do these jobs, but rely on integrations back and forth and have different views of the world in terms of how they record data and how that's passed on to the next step. The one common thing across all these processes is that you inevitably get a lot of people involved in them. So there's a lot of people doing very manual tasks, repetitive tasks, below their pay grade as well. And people make mistakes. We're all human. You're going to make mistakes if you're hand cranking invoices every day. And this really damages customer relationships, and customers remember this stuff. If you send them a contract that's missing a clause, or you fail to review a clause that they've sent over, that damages that relationship. If you're taking 2 weeks to get a quote out the door, if you're misbilling them for the third time in a row, all of this stuff has an impact, and it leads to attrition in our customer base. So what's the answer to all of this? Unsurprisingly, it's Agentforce Revenue Management. And this is a kind of a high-level view of what that capability facilitates. So this is an end-to-end quote-to-cash solution built on the world's #1 trusted CRM. And it all starts off with having a solid catalog strategy. So organizing what you want to sell, how you want to price it, and how you want to bundle it, and how you want to go to market. Now, unlike previous iterations of our CPQ solutions, this isn't just creating quotes via a salesperson. You can sell these things through any channel you want. You can use our commerce solution to do that. You can use your own storefront to do that. We have APIs that will allow you to call these pricing services from anywhere. It could be an in-app experience. And everything your customers do buy, they get captured in a contract. And that is, again, something you don't need to go and procure a third-party solution for now. We've closed the loop on that. And this ships out of the box with Revenue Cloud. So you can create those documents. You've got the line items there. It comes directly from the quote. And you can use that to drive all of those amendments further downstream. You can, of course, process complex orders now as well. So you can break orders down into their constituent parts and make sure that the downstream systems know about them at the right time as well. All of this to say, really, that the right half of this diagram effectively becomes about exception management, right? It's fully automated. You define this upfront at the catalog level, and it's really just reacting to stuff that isn't going as planned, and we have workflows to cater for that as well. Now, our billing capability is really the engine that takes all that goodness that we've done upstream and just completely automates all of the invoicing off the back of that. And as mentioned, we have agents peppered across every single step of this process to make this as easier and frictionless process as possible and to drive that adoption of CRM. And what I'm really excited about is, by virtue of having a great ecosystem of ISVs, we partner with the likes of RightRev to really deliver truly the most complete revenue management solution on the market. So think about Agentforce Revenue Management as handling the upfront part of this, the configure, pricing, quoting, generating that contract and the order. RightRev completely closes the loop here and turns those bookings into compliant, audit-ready revenue, completely automating all of that revenue recognition, the billing alignment, and it ultimately makes closing the books at the end of the month or at the end of the period a non-event. And that is what everyone working in finance is striving towards. So very excited about the partnership and the joint solution that we've got here. I'd like to hand over to Andrew to add a little bit of color around the RightRev capabilities that we'll be discussing in today's presentation.
Thank you, Frank. Yeah, when we talk about revenue leakage, RightRev's ability to fall in line with the Salesforce process, really give you that full quote to revenue to cash process in one platform is so powerful that we're solving for that revenue leakage just out of the box. RightRev now, we're built to handle those simple scenarios that come up in the revenue process. But as we all know, the sales motions are growing incredibly complex as things continue to expand into the consumption world, into just event-based processes, and into AI in general. So RightRev's not just built to handle those simple scenarios, we're also built to handle your most complex needs from a revenue recognition standpoint, whether that be things like SSP calculations and application of those standalone selling prices, whether it's aligning contract modifications and making sure that you're getting the full picture of revenue recognition, no matter what's happening upstream as part of that sales process. That's what RightRev's here to solve for. And as we've mentioned, we'll have all of that audit ready, give you all of the reporting and necessary information that you need so that you have full confidence in that revenue process. Really excited to show what that looks like. So with that in mind, we will jump into the demonstration today. And I think Justin's going to lead us off, giving you the sales to billing process.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Just had a bit of problem finding the unmute button there, but thank you for that. So yeah, let's put all of this into a presentation that you guys can actually watch and see for real. What I'm going to be doing today is walking you through a process where we're going to create a quote. The quote is going to have some complex kind of rollouts to it. I'm going to be working with a company that want to sign up for a 5-year deal. However, they want to roll out specific items across that 5 years, and they want to have specific discounts applied within that 5-year period as well. So what I'm going to do is walk you through creating that quote. We can then send that quote out to our customer. Customer can accept it. We'll then see the order creation from the quote. And then from the order creation, we'll be able to create the assets, view the assets, and also generate some invoices directly from that. There's so much detail we could go into, so I'm going to keep it as short and sweet as I can. Wearing my sales hat, I'm going to just work within my account, which is North Point Technologies. I already have an opportunity that's created, which I've been working on in the past. So let's just navigate to my opportunity. We can see that this is a proposal price quote stage. So let's create the quote that we can then start to work with that pricing on. Okay, my quote name is going to be new business. My expiration date is a month from today. Let's give my start date as today's date, and I'm going to choose a term of 60. What's important for me is to choose my bill to contact and my prepared for contact. My build to contact is going to be the person that's receiving the invoices, and my prepared for contact is going to be the person who's going to receive the quote and sign off. In this case, they're both the same person. Next thing I'm going to do is actually then generate the quote. And here we can see the quote has been created on the right hand side. So let's open the quote, and then what we can do is actually start to put together the quote details. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually browse my catalogs. And this is where, as a business, I can start to create multiple different catalogs. If I'm selling multiple different products or I've got different business units, I can start to separate all of my products into a catalog where it's easy for me as a salesperson to navigate directly to those products. So I'm just going to hit Browse Catalogs, and I'm going to come to my Quantec catalog and hit Next. And then this is where I've got all of my products split up into my different groups. So I'm going to choose servers, and I'm going to choose my rack servers, and I'm going to choose the Quantum Pro R1 U100 server. I've got different buying options, so I can see how I can actually sell this from a sales perspective. So I can sell it as a term defined subscription, or I can sell it as a monthly subscription. What I'm going to do is keep it as a term defined, and then I can actually come in and configure the product itself. I can start to configure the different makeup of this server. So I could choose the different chassis type, a different form factor, and different degrees. Now, as I'm doing this, it's updating this section on the right. I'm not going to amend the quantity yet because, as I mentioned earlier, what I want to do is actually roll this out over a 5-year term. So let's save and exit this quote. The next thing I want to do is actually add in, let's come back to our all products. I'm going to add in some services. So I'm going to add in this hardware installation, and I'll just add that product and then hit save. So this now brings me back out to my, what we call the transaction line editor. And here we can see I've got a quantity of 1. We've got the start and end date, which is a 6-year term. But now I actually want to roll out the number of servers over that 5-year period. So let's quickly go into the ramping. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to ramp this product. And this allows me to choose, so it's a 60-month. Let's generate these ramping segments. This now allows me to choose the number of units that I'm going to sell. So this is year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and year 5. So let's just amend these quantities. So year 1, I'm going to have 10. Year 2, we'll just choose 20. Year 3, 30. I think you're getting the gist of this now. 40, and then we'll have 50 for the final year. But as we get into year 3, what I want to do is actually apply a discount as we're going along. So year 3, I'm going to apply a 5-year discount. Year 4, we're going to apply a 10% discount. And then year 5, that's going to be on a 15% discount. The next thing I will do as a sales user is just update these segments. What this is doing now is committing it back into my quote so we can see how that affects the pricing. So let's save this. The next thing I'm going to do is do a quick reprice all. Here we can see it's been updated. And then finally, let's give that a very quick refresh and see what this does to my quote. So here we can see I've got a little information, and this saying I'm only seeing the first segments. So in order to view all of the other segments, and the same again with the pricing, what I can do again is come back into this ramping. And this shows me the values that we're going to be firstly invoicing, but what we need to then start to recognize from the revenue perspective. So here we can see our net price per unit and the total price for year 1. Again, net price per unit for year 2 and the total price. As we get into that year 3 and onwards, here we can see that net unit price is starting to be discounted And here is the values for those. The next thing that I can do is I can actually submit it for approval. Actually, there's no approvals needed. So we can actually generate the document for this, and we'll send that out to our customer. So using the out-of-the-box document generation, which is Omni Studio, that comes with Agentforce Revenue Management, I can generate my document. Firstly, what it's going to do is pick the template, and it's going to return it all to me to review as a salesperson to make sure that I'm happy with the document before I actually commit that to our customer. So I can come in, I can review the template here. I can see all of the data that's on the template, and I can also review all of the terms and conditions. So we can actually go into a CLM process where we start to actually have the clauses redlined. Okay, I'm happy with this. Before I can actually send it out to my customer, it needs to be in approved status. So let's just move it to approved. Now I can see that I've got my sender for e-signature. So let's very quickly send that out, and we can now send that off to our customer to review and sign that document. Here we can see that my quote now is in a presented status, and on my related list here I can see that there is a quote proposal that's been generated. So I'll very quickly change hats. I'm going to jump into my customer persona now. Working as a customer, let me just open up my email. So I'm now Marcus, who I put in as the contact earlier. Marcus has now got an email to say there is a document to review. I can now come in, review the document, and then sign that document. So here we are, looking in there. I've got the date of it, dated today's date. It's for my new business. This goes down, give me the description of my hardware installation, which is a $2,000. And we then go into the yearly updates. Per year, first year, I'm going to have 10 quantity, second year, 20, third year, 30, fourth year, and fifth year are all listed here. So I'm happy with that. I'm happy with the clauses. It's got my right details in. It's picked it up from my contact record. I'm now going to sign this document. I'll just adopt that first signature, and then I'll then sign that. So what's happened is, from a sales perspective, I generated the quote. It's allowed me to ramp it very quickly. We've sent that document to the customer who has signed it. Now I'll just jump back into my sales hat, and what I'll do, I will come back in to my opportunity here. Sorry, my quote. And my quote has now been marked as accepted. So within my related section here, I can see that I've got my signed version that's been updated. But what I can also see is there has been an order now that's been created from this opportunity and quote. Next thing I'll then do, I will jump again, personas. So I'm now going to be working within my operations persona, and I can now work directly from this order that's been created. The first thing I'm going to do is very quickly create a new contract, which is going to house all of my assets for this. I'll very quickly mark this as activated, and we'll go back into my order. From within the order, I can mark any PO numbers, I can update any detail while this is in a draft status. So I'll just very quickly add in the PO date, which is going to be today's date. I'll add in the PO number, which is 675543. I'll save that. And then the next thing I'm going to do is actually activate this order. And then by activating the order, that is going to do a couple of things. The first thing it's going to do is allow me to actually submit this order for fulfillment, which is where I can decompose the order, fulfill it in multiple different platforms. So I can go into my ERP, I can pick the items, I can ship them. That will then flow through into the next process where I can send out an engineer onto the site using field service lightning. Not actually going to go into that flow today. What I'm just going to actually focus on now is the fact that I've got billing schedules that have been created. So this shows me that I'm going to be generating invoices. It shows me my next invoice date, and it shows me that the status is ready for invoicing. So here I can see I've got 2 items that are going to be picked up on the next invoice, which is going to be my 10 servers and my installation. Now, what would normally happen is they would go into an invoice scheduling process, which would be picked up and run at the end of every day, the end of every week, or the end of every month. But what I can do, I can actually generate the invoices directly. The first thing that I want to do, though, is I actually want to preview the invoices. So let's have a quick look at the next 2 billing periods. So let's preview these. So what this is going to do, it's going to show me my next 2 annual invoices, because this is set to annual invoicing. On the first invoice, what we'll see is, and here we go, we can see the 10 servers that are going to be invoiced at a total of 12,000. We'll also see the 2,000 installation. But what we can see here is I can see 2 preview of those invoices. So that's my first invoice that's going to be generated on the 21st of January today. And then the next invoice, which is going to be generated on the 21st of January 2027, is going to show the 20. So I'm happy with that. Let's then generate those invoices. And I'm going to generate it at today's date, and I'm going to generate it in a posted status. So let's generate that invoice. And let's come over to the related section. And this is where I can start to see my invoices. So looking at these billing schedules now, we can see that the first section has been completely billed. So the 10 servers for the first year have been completely billed, and also my installation has been completely billed. Let's very quickly have a look at the invoice. So from within the invoice, I can see that there has been an email that's been sent to Marcus. Currently, that remains as unopened, but the invoice has got all of the details, my invoice lines, the balances, but it also creates me a payment schedule, which I can actually collect payments against very shortly. Let's very quickly log in as Marcus again. We'll go to Marcus's Gmail, and we can see that I've sent him an email saying my latest invoice is ready for review. Gives me all of the details, but I can also download that invoice and review that invoice, which gives me the details of my 1 server and my hardware. Let's just very quickly come back into this record and give it a quick refresh. What we can see is that we can see Marcus actually opened that invoice a few seconds ago. So it gives me full audit trail on the invoice. The next thing I'm going to do is generate the very next invoice, so next year's invoice. So let's go back to generate invoices, and we're going to generate this invoice for 2027, again dated the 21st of January, and the invoice date is going to be the 21st of January 2027, and we'll mark that as a posted invoice. And very quickly, I'm going to come back into my related section. And here we can see the second invoice that's been generated. Coming back to the billing schedules, we can see that all of the invoices that have been completely billed are shown as completely billed here. So From a invoicing and revenue perspective, what we've done is we've actually created a quote. From that quote, we've generated an order. That order has been activated and we've created billing schedules. And the billing schedules have taken all of the data from the quote that I've created. So there's going to be, what we're losing is all of the rekeying of any information into any other platform. That's all being automated for me. And I can also then run and go and collect those payments in an automated fashion. So what we're seeing is any kind of manual entry being removed, and it's all being automated directly from the quote that I created as a sales user. Now, what I would normally do is change my hat into my finance perspective. But what we're going to do is I'm going to pass over to Andrew now to actually go through and see what happens from that kind of revenue recognition perspective. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Justin. And I always love Justin's mini hats. Unfortunately, today I don't have any myself, but we will be working as our revenue accountant. So starting from really where Justin left off, he had created that order, he had activated the order, done the billing. But what we want to highlight, when RightRev is included on the Salesforce platform, that order activation becomes extremely important because the order activation actually triggers the creation of what we call a revenue contract. So I can click into this revenue contract, and this is now what RightRev offers. So we are tracking all of those various performance obligations. We're tracking all of that invoicing detail. We're assigning revenue treatment, and ultimately we'll be creating journal entries that we're posting to the ERP. As a part of creating this revenue contract, we're tracking some really important information to align the sales process with revenue. So we're tracking your total contract value, which in this case is just that total sales price of all of those various items summarized here on the right-hand side. We're then combining that billing information that Justin had already posted. Now you might be questioning, why does RightRev show 14,000 when Justin went through and billed an additional 24,000 for year 2? The reason for that is that not only is RightRev handling your revenue recognition, we're also acting as that revenue subledger for you. So what that means is we have a strict period open, period close process and can only have one open period per legal entity at a time. So I have January 2026 open. So even though Justin created an invoice for January of 2027, we're going to hold that billing information until it comes through January 2027's open period. So it'll just hold, and then as we open up, it'll automatically flow into RightRev and update all of our metrics for us. So that would change our billing information. We then have some metrics around our revenue recognition itself, so how much we've actually recognized and posted to the ERP. So I'll touch on that journal entry process shortly. In this case, it was just created. We have not run the revenue recognition yet. But then we ultimately track revenue in really 2 different buckets. So we have revenue planned and revenue unplanned. Revenue planned is just all of those various performance obligations that we've got here that have actually been triggered. So we've satisfied that obligation. We've released the revenue, so to speak, whether it's recognizing now or over a long period. In this case, maybe it's over 5 years like we see. But that revenue is actually on our waterfall and it will continue to recognize over time. Revenue unplanned is the opposite. It's where we're still waiting for some sort of future activity to take place. Maybe it's future billings, maybe it's some sort of event like fulfillment to drive the revenue recognition process. So in this example today, most of our revenue we went ahead and released as a part of the initial booking, but we do have some revenue associated to that hardware installation that we'll be recognizing based on events. Now, additionally, what RightRev does is, again, we're not just here to solve that simple straight line revenue recognition process. We're really here to help solve the more complex scenarios that can pop up. One of those that we mentioned earlier is applying SSP policies, those standalone selling prices. So what we have and what we can handle within the platform is we can assign different SSP policies and treatments for each of our different obligations that we're taking in. All of this is configured on the back end so that as these orders are activated, we're automatically applying the correct revenue treatment. But as part of that, you can see we have our cumulative carves, as we call them, which is truly that allocation, line item to line item, performance obligation to performance obligation, ultimately getting us to our cumulative net revenue, which is the amount of revenue we'll actually be recognizing for each line item. As such, because there's a chance that we'll be recognizing more revenue than we've billed in a certain year, we're also always going to track things like your contract position. You might be sitting in a contract liability initially as we've invoiced that first year, but as you continue to recognize revenue, if we ever cross that threshold where we've now recognized more than we've billed, Rev's going to automatically make that contract asset adjustment for you. So again, we're handling and automating all of that revenue process to give your revenue accountant team more time to actually give value add activities like analyzing the data and making sure everything is as you want it to be. With that, we also have some additional information that we can track here within each individual contract. So we have various reporting metrics we can look into. We have all of our different waterfall reports to give you all of, again, that audit ready information. And this example, we're only seeing revenue associated to that quantum server, but we can see all of that revenue, even though we had multiple line items out into 5 years, we can see all of that revenue scheduled and see some of those increases year over year, because not only did we increase the price, we increased the actual performance obligation itself. We increased the quantity that was being offered. So we can see that step up from a revenue recognition standpoint. If the performance obligation wasn't changed and we were offering the same amount, but just a ramped pricing, we might see a bit of a different schedule here. We might see a straight line recognition. All of this is very configurable within the back end for us, and we can handle all of that based on your different processes that you'd have in play. With that in mind, each and every one of these individual line items that we have, we call them our revenue contract lines. They'll equate to that order product that was created upstream. But within each of these revenue contract lines, we're tracking a lot of valuable information from a revenue standpoint, but ultimately we're also assigning all of that different revenue recognition policy information. So I can scroll down here in our details and see we have a specific revenue rule associated to this product where we're going to release revenue based on that booking. We're going to recognize ratably over the period that we have. And then this is the application of those SSP policies as well. We can see which of our policies actually came into play here, what that SSP price was for this specific obligation. We'll have all of the reporting and everything you would need to analyze this as well. That's really one of the beauties of RightRev being on the Salesforce platform too, is that reporting functionality, because not only do we have all of this information here in RightRev, we're able to layer in information from all over the Salesforce platform into the reporting. RightRev just utilizes standard Salesforce reporting functionality. So we're just layering in our metrics and pulling in all of the different data points that are available within the tool. Now that we have this revenue contract created, I mentioned RightRev is acting as that revenue subledger. Part of that is that we have our journal run process. So we're actually creating and recognizing those revenue transactions into the ERP. As such, I have an example of one of our journal entries. You can see we have all of our different chart of accounts information here, all of the different debits and credits. This view is a summarized view, which we do give you two different options. We can create a summarized entry that will post a bit more summarized information into the ERP, or we have our detailed journal entry, which is truly going to be a line-by-line journal entry process that allows you to pull in and add additional segments of information that are important to your company. Once we're ready, though, we can review these journal entries and actually transfer, which would initiate that recognition into the ERP and update all of our revenue recognition within each and every one of our revenue contracts that was impacted. Additionally, again, I mentioned the fact that we have a very strict period open, period close process. We can click into our period open close tab here and see the various legal entities we have, see which of our periods is actually the current period open. And then with permissioning, I can come through and actually initiate that month-end process where we lock this current period and open up subsequent periods. So that's all handled here within RightRev, taking all of that burden off of the ERP and giving you truly one full platform on Salesforce that can handle that entire quote to revenue process. Now, there's a ton of other functionality I could get into from a revenue recognition standpoint. Again, we're built to handle a lot of complexities. So we have a lot of native out-of-the-box functionality that we can enable. With that being said, with the shortened time today, I want to hand it back over to Justin and Frank to get us moving forward on the webinar.
Thank you very much, Andrew and Justin. Brilliant demo there, really complete. Justin, did you want to wrap that up with this slide?
Yeah, basically what Agentforce Revenue Management allows you to do, and what we've seen as part of this demo, is the fact that your quote to cash can be a lot quicker. You can cut the quote cycle times and the discount leakage by ensuring that you've got all of the stage gates, all of those processes plugged in upstream, so that by the time the order is created, you're fully confident with the data that order is going to then lead down into the billing, into that revenue recognition piece. Once you've got predictable and more effective flows between creating your quotes, creating those orders, ensuring that you're not losing any revenue, you've got all of your discount processes set up, and you know that your invoices are going to be correct, that gives you more predictable cash flow. So from a business perspective, knowing that my invoices are correct, knowing that they're accurate, gives me more confidence in being able to forecast out what I expect to collect in from cash collections, and ensuring that my DSO remains as low as possible. And then the final piece on that is you get the compliance. So you can be confident that your revenue recognition is ASC 606 compliant and also IFRS 15 compliance. And again, that's all being managed directly on that Salesforce platform. And one of the key things we actually didn't go into is how AI can really start to pick up all of that data. So you've got all of good data on the platform. What AI can actually do to help with your forecasting, your reporting, and how can it actually speed up some of the process that we went through as a manual process there. Thank you, Frank. Back over to you.
Thanks, Justin. And on that point, it's always good to leave people wanting more. So maybe that's one for another webinar. Claire, did you want to move us on to the panel before we close out in the last 10 minutes?
Absolutely. So I see that we've had some questions coming in the Q&A, which is fantastic. Thanks, Frank, for picking those up. So if you have any more, please do feel free to add them to the Q&A and we'll continue to pick them up. But just some questions for the panel around, we had some come in, which was about the existing CPQ managed package and how Agentforce Revenue Management, is it at parity to what was there before? Frank, I'm assuming that's for you.
Sure, happy to take that one. It's a good question. It's one that we get asked a lot. And I guess the answer is yes, but it's more extensive than that. We don't really think about it in terms of parity because we really weren't trying to just rebuild CPQ. We wanted to reimagine how you could structure a quote to cash solution to create something more scalable and more flexible as well to meet infinitely more use cases. And I think we've done just that. So if I can phrase it slightly differently, any use case that you could handle in the old CPQ, you can handle in the new CPQ. I think also we listen to our customer base, particularly around things like, contract lifecycle management, that having to go off platform for that and integrate a third-party tool to handle that. Also having an order that you're just having to basically hand over as one entity to an ERP and leave it over to the ERP to figure out. We recognize that was sub-ideal, right? So having capabilities like Salesforce Contracts and DRO, I think, are huge wins and elevators beyond anything I think we'd ever achieved in the CPQ space prior. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
I think so. Great stuff. Thank you. And I want on revenue recognition. So I'm assuming, Andrew, if you can pick this up just around what are the common pitfalls that you see that companies make when looking at a solution such as RightRev?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I would say sometimes you're not thinking about the future. So a lot of times companies are trying to solve for their current processes and making sure that whatever tool they select can at least help them in today's world. That being said, there's a lot of times where those solutions can't scale and they simply can't keep up with processes that continue to evolve and continue to get more complex over time as the business grows and things change. And that's really where an area that RightRev strives to succeed. We have a lot of different out-of-the-box functionalities that help us not only scale with you, but we're going to take in our customer feedback and enhance the product in a way that enables all of our customers to continue to scale and use our tool throughout their time with us.
Brilliant. Thank you. And just around projects, what does this look like, Justin, for building out a project of this sort of scale for a company? Is there any examples that you could share or scenarios to help people understand what it takes to get started? What are the next steps?
Yeah, at PhiX, we've worked on multiple Agentforce revenue management projects. And one key thing that stands out to me is we need to ensure that before we do any automation, we need to focus on the foundations that everything else depends on. What we don't want to do is just automate chaos. So in practice, what we do is we start with revenue at the truth at the source. Called out earlier about the catalog and prices. So the first thing to do is rationalize your offer structure, standardize discounting logic, and then build a repeatable approval model. Because if your products and pricing aren't controlled, then every downstream system will then drift. The next thing is defining the revenue policy upfront with finance. So thinking about those performance obligations, the SSPs, and all of the allocation rules, so that when you're automating that revenue recognition, you're automating exactly what's been agreed and not what somebody hopes is true. And then also you've got to think about that data quality. Data is the whole thing that keeps all of this stuff true. And if you've got bad data, if you've got bad data governance, bad change control, then it's going to kill all of your processes. So you really need to think about that data governance and all of the downstream processes that hang off of that. The next thing is to think about how you then phase things in. So a good example is a customer that we've worked with, large US customer, works in the kind of red light services. And what they did was they focused on one point first. So they focused on giving them multiple business units, but giving them a single shared data foundation so that they could all quote from the same product catalog. They've got all of the same approval processes, and the process was the same no matter which business unit they were working from. So that customer's actually done 3 rollouts now for multiple business units and multiple different aspects of kind of that revenue quote to cash journey. I think a good place to start with is it's that catalog, that pricing control with that finance aligned policy and that data discipline right behind it. So a long answer, hopefully that's given you an idea.
Fantastic. And I think we've got another slide just to show the output or the outcome of the quote to cash project with Intrado, which we presented these results alongside our customer at New York World Tour. And the exciting thing for all of the finance team was to see that there was an 88% reduction in time to revenue based on their historical deals, and that 94% of their deals were running through the Revenue Cloud quoting system, which was fantastic. And there was just a few exceptions that were outside that, where it was quotes that had been billed before the actual project had gone live. So very exciting outcome, and we can obviously share some more detail on that. Upcoming, we have also got revenue integrity session that we're offering to all of you here. It's a 75-minute, very precise number, session where you can join the team. We can actually walk through your quote to revenue architecture alongside and look at some of the areas that are impacting your revenue confidence and control, and provide some immediate tactical guidance on where to strengthen first. And out of that, you'll have where your baseline is and some specific next steps where we can start to prioritize those recommendations in just the same way that Justin was talking about there, for either some quick wins or a strategic transformation that can be broken down into a phased project for you to go live. So if you want to hear more about that, do get in touch with the PhiX team. And lastly, I just wanted to bring this to your attention. So next week, similar time as now, we have got an agentic revenue engine webinar with Frank's colleague, David Beebe, who's head of revenue solutions at Salesforce, along with Tundi Musaka, who's our chief strategy officer. And they're going to be diving into the agentic use cases that we've been talking about today. I'm just going to drop a link to the webinar in the chat. I'll also follow up with the recording in the next few days, and you'll also have the link there. Just wanted to wrap up in the last seconds to say thank you so much for joining us. If you have any further questions, you've got the names of the team here. So we have Frank Hopwood from Salesforce, Andrew Trumpeter from RightRev, Justin Wheatley from PhiX Technology, and I've been your host, Claire Pankhurst from PhiX. Also, email address there will take you through and somebody in the team will pick that up. So thanks again for spending the afternoon with us, and we wish you well. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thanks for joining, everyone. Take care.